It is April 8th, which means I'm officially 7 months into this journey, which is the longest it's ever been to find another job opportunity. And it's starting to wear on me. This podcast helps because it is a purpose that I have for everyone that is going through a job search journey. But the reality is it's starting to really wear on me. I want to work. I want to thrive. I know that for all of these companies that I've interviewed for, I would be an amazing fit and do great things at that company, because I wouldn't have made it to the final round of that interview process if I didn't feel that this was a good fit for me and that the position wasn't a good fit for me. So I know I would have done a good job there, but it just didn't work out. And that's the way life works. And I'm in a fortunate position. My wife, as I said, is a rock star. We're able to keep the lights on. We're able to put food on the table for ourselves and our daughter, and we're going to be okay. But psychologically, not being able to provide for the family, not being able to look yourself in the mirror every day and have a purpose of a job that you're going to, that you're working towards, that you're providing value for people, that starts to wear on you. And it's certainly wearing on me. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Job Seeker's Journey podcast. This episode's going to be a little bit different. I know a couple episodes ago, you heard me talk for about 30 minutes, just myself, talking about how I hoped that humanity would show through in the job search process. And I still believe that 100%. When I first started this podcast, one of the things that I told myself right off the bat was that it was not going to be about me. And I wholeheartedly believe that. I remember I watched a video by this guy that was talking about creating a business. Not that this is a business, but it applies to this podcast as well, where he talked about obsessing about your audience's problems, obsessing about what your audience is going through and not making this about you. And as he put it, no one really cares about you and your issues. They care about their issues, and they want to know that you care about their issues. And that really resonated with me, and I've stuck to that principle. But I think that there have been times where that makes you suffer a little bit, because you start holding things in and you start to isolate your own self, and you start to not become vulnerable, and you start to put on a bit of a show, and you start to do all of these things that ultimately are not healthy for you. And it starts to wear on you a little bit. So I'm going to share a little bit of vulnerability with you today. I have been struggling pretty handily the last couple of weeks. Things are starting to hit me that this process is taking a lot longer than I hoped for and anticipating it taking. Now, I'm pretty good at masking that. I don't talk about it. I don't bring it up to a lot of people, because I don't want to be that guy that brings people down. But it also makes you hold these things in, and eventually it just starts to show in all aspects of your life. So this is a step for me to do that. In the last few weeks, I've been having a couple interviews here and there, and I've been asked a few questions that have started to weigh on me a little bit. One of which being, why are you not working now? To which I have a legitimate, honest good answer for, in that I'm not 100% sure what happened in my last position. I was really enjoying the position. I really was loving the company. I really was loving what we were doing, and I was growing in that position. Undoubtedly, it was a bit of a stretch to have me come in that I didn't spend the last 15, 20 years in the oil and gas industry. But I had spent a lot of time in working with clients on the IT side, and I had spent a lot of time managing projects that were similar to the projects we were doing at the company. I didn't have a immediate supervisor that took a huge interest in me, so I was doing a lot of the work of learning some of the things that I needed to get back up to speed on, because I had been out of the industry for a little while. I had bought books. I was studying on my own. I was asking as many questions as I could. And then, without any notice, without any warning, without any formal or informal notice that maybe they didn't think my performance was what they thought it should be, they just let me go. Right. And then I was left in this void of having to explain that and wanting to stay positive, because I don't have a negative thing to say about the company, and trying to answer why I'm on the market now that brings light to my abilities and helps propel me forward. And that's been weighing on me a little bit because I had no control over that. Another question that I've received a bunch is, why do you have so many positions that you've been at, and some of which being short term? And again, always wanting to leave everything on a positive light, I've had an ability to explain it in a way that makes sense. But it wears on you after a while, because you start to notice that that's being looked at negatively on you. And the hard part about it is that you want to bring everything to a positive light. You don't ever want to sound defensive, and you don't ever want to be negative towards another company. And I'm not. And I'm legitimately, my mindset is not that. But the reality of the situation is I have zero control over what a company decides to do with their workforce. In 2015, when I was laid off for the first time, I had zero control over the oil price. I worked for an oilfield service company. In 2014, everything was amazing. The price was good. People were buying. Heck, we had our best year and final quarter that we had ever had as the central region of that company. And by January, the oil price had plummeted. Suddenly it was, you guys got to do better. And then they decided to do layoffs, and I was caught up in the layoff. I found out later that there were 2 people in our entire division of that company, the central region sales division of Baker Hughes. There were 2 people that were put on an untouchable list. So there were 2 people that weren't eligible for layoffs. And I wasn't one of those 2 people. And I was part of the layoff. There's nothing you can do about that. In my second layoff, it was COVID. And many companies were struggling, and you can't control a global pandemic, obviously. And they were able to keep people through the most of the year of 2020. But I was in a middle management role, and a role that was not part of bringing in revenue directly, being that I wasn't in sales. I was a director of marketing. I wasn't a project manager anymore at that company, so I wasn't helping to deliver the projects that did come in and making money for the company through the installments that happens through the project. And the other side of that is that we had a regime change over the course of that year as well. The old CEO had been pushed out. A new CEO came in. And that CEO knew nothing of how I got into the role that I was in as the director of marketing. I had been asked to do that job, and through extended conversations with my boss at the time, I told him this is more of a full-time position because originally they wanted it to be part-time. But there was a lot of things they wanted and a lot of content they wanted to create. And I said, this is a full-time position. Thus, I was given the opportunity to be the director of marketing for that company. Well, that new CEO didn't know that story and was pretty ignorant to what I was doing, was pretty ignorant to the progress we had made in marketing, was pretty ignorant to marketing in general, and was ignorant to me and my story of how I got there, and thus asked me a question and flat out told me that he believed I manipulated my way into that position, which was absolutely not true, but is what he believed. Thus, he laid me off. I had zero control over that. He didn't even want to hear my answer to that, didn't want to know the actual story, didn't even care that there was a story to it. I had no control over that. Then, having a 5-month-old baby, I was forced to try to find a job, and it took a while, and it was 6 months in, and I got an offer to work at the only company that has ever not been a good fit for me. It's a good company, great people, enjoyed everyone that I met, but the company as a whole was not a good fit for me, how they treated employees as a whole, what the environment was, what they expected of everyone did not fit me and my family situation at that point. So that is the only position that I have ever left in my entire life. But I had to find something, and I found a temporary position that was only going to be a year. So that looks like a short stint because it was only ever going to be a year. But that led me into consulting, and I loved doing consulting. And after a couple years of that, and it being a really tough environment and doing well in that tough environment, I got recruited to go to my final or last job that I've had. And I thought that was going to be the job that I was going to be at for 20 years. And then I've already explained what happened to that one. I tell that whole story because not everyone is placed into positions where they automatically can thrive and where they're brought up and allowed to learn and allowed to grow as an employee and then be rewarded for it. There are great stories of that all around. I have friends where that has happened. And I know that they are amazing employees, and I take nothing away from what they've done. They've done amazing things. My wife is a rock star at what she does. She's had some amazing bosses that have also helped her along the way. She's working at a great place now with a great boss that is allowing her to grow and thrive and use her ability to be a rock star to help the company. And she's going to benefit from that. And I'm so excited for her for that. But not everyone has that opportunity. Sometimes you have more of a peaks and valleys career, and I'm one of those people. Heck, it started off that way. I've already told the story a couple episodes ago about how when I was in college and I ultimately got that first job, The recruiter told me he didn't want me. Flat out, pointed in my face, said, "We don't want you." And then I ended up getting that job. Well, what that job was, I was working at Baker Hughes. At the time, there was a division of Baker Hughes called Baker Hughes Central Lift, which is the artificial lift portion of Baker Hughes. And they had the most amazing onboarding program I have ever heard of and ever seen, called Ramp. And what that was is you were a full-time person getting paid a salary, but for the first 6 months, you didn't have a permanent position yet. The first 3 months of that was going through classroom situations where you learned everything there was to know about Baker Hughes, everything there was to know about the oil field. And the coolest thing that they did is they would bring in department heads to tell you what their department did. And if that was something you were very interested in, you would have the opportunity to meet with that department head. And if they had an opening, you could have an interview with them, and then that could become your permanent position. Well, when the project management director came in, I knew that project management was going to be a good fit for me, and I was very interested in that, but there wasn't an opening in that. And at one point, I had the opportunity to speak to the VP of marketing for Baker Hughes Central Lift. Her name was Maria, and she was amazing. She was incredible with me. We got along very well. We spoke similar language, and I knew that at some point I would love to work for her, but there wasn't an opening at that time there either. The final 3 months of your onboarding is they send you to a field office for Baker Hughes. There was a lot of them. There was one in Midland, one in Calgary, Canada, and then there were a bunch of others. And one of the ones was Huntington Beach, California. And I was fortunate enough to be sent to Huntington Beach, which is an incredible place to be sent for oil field. Let me tell you, it was incredible. And while you're in that field office, you do everything for that field office. You work in the shop, you work with engineering, you work for the business people, you work with sales. You do all of these things to learn what those field offices do. But I was coming to the end of my 6 months and I didn't have a permanent position yet. And I remembered my conversation with the VP of marketing, and I sent her an email and I said, "Hi, Maria, my name's Brad. I hope you remember me. And if there is ever an opportunity, I would love to come work for your company. I don't have a permanent position yet. I would love to come work for your group and learn from you." And I actually found out that there was one that was going to be opening up and she was interested in me. And I got really excited. And then something happened. And this kind of set the tone for my career thus far. The head of that field office that I was in brought me into his office. He had been notified that I had reached out to the VP of marketing to see if there was a position open. And he thought that I was going to be staying with them and thought that we had had some conversation which didn't happen, where I had agreed to stay in Huntington Beach. And when he brought me into his office, he accused me of going behind his back to try to manipulate where I wanted to go, and that I was going back on my word of wanting to work in the field office. Now, I hadn't gotten an offer for a permanent position, and I hadn't had a formal interview for a position there, but apparently in his mind, I had went behind his back. And thus I didn't get to go to the marketing. I then agreed to stay in Huntington Beach, which is fine. I enjoyed my time out there. There's a lot of things that I did that I wish I hadn't done as far as personally. I was going through a rough time. but that had nothing to do with the job. But that kind of set the tone. I was accused of going behind his back before I even started a job. And in my mind, I hadn't. And in reality, I hadn't. But that's what happened to me. And there are a lot of my friends that I look up to for so many different reasons. I have a friend who works in the food industry, and he is an absolute rock star when it comes to the food industry. And I've gotten a chance to watch him move up the ranks. He's now a regional manager. He's incredible at it. But he's also in such an amazing environment that his bosses want him to succeed and help him succeed when he needs it. And I could go on and on about him because I admire him more than I can even express. I love his work ethic. I'm inspired by that every day. The way he is able to be an incredible dad to his 3 boys, or his 2 boys and girl. And the way he is able to compartmentalize work with family and everything he does, I admire. But he's also been in an amazing environment with an amazing company that's helped him grow, and he's able to thrive there. I think sometimes when you have friends that are able to thrive like they are and have a company that wants them to succeed and wants to help pull them up, you start to look at yourself and say, what is wrong with the way I work? I work hard. I'm dedicated. I have successful projects. I get done what I'm supposed to get done. I go above and beyond when that's needed. I've sacrificed my family with different positions because I was working 60 or more hours a week to try to make a project happen. I've done those things only to have a boss that isn't appreciative of that, and in fact is accusing you of things that isn't true on top of all of that. I've had that. And this isn't a woe is me. I've had great jobs. I've met great people. I've had some tough environments, but I've done well. But when you start going through a job search like I am now, and you have the experiences you have, I think anytime you start a job search, you have this vigor and this determination to yourself when you first get started. I'm going to find a job. I'm going to find it quickly. I'm going to do everything I can. I've got a lot of contacts I can reach out to. I have a lot of jobs that I can apply for. I have a lot of people that I can ask for help for. And you do those things. And I did those things. And I was able to secure a couple interviews pretty early on. And I got 7 rounds into an interview with a company that I would have loved to work for. Got to the final round. Went to go see them in their office, traveled to their place in Chicago, spent my own money to do it with the belief that they were on the verge of making an offer to me and I wanted to meet them in person, only to find out they had second thoughts about hiring anybody at that point and decided to pull out of the decision. Okay. Then I got to the final round of another company, and I absolutely love that company, wanted to work there, still want to work there. Turned out they were hiring 2 people, and it was between me and 2 other people for those 2 positions. There was 3 of us total, and I was the only one who wasn't an internal referral. I came from a recruiting service, and I lost out. Then you go and you have some more. And I've had a total of 4 rounds of interviews where I have made it to the final round each time. The last 2, one company decided they're not going to hire anybody because their job description didn't match what they really wanted. And thus, even though I matched the job description perfectly, they decided not to hire anybody. And then another one has went through some tough times since the final round and hasn't been able to hire anyone at the time. But I'm sitting here now. It is April 8th, which means I'm officially 7 months into this journey, which is the longest it's ever been to find another job opportunity. And it's starting to wear on me. This podcast helps because it is a purpose that I have for everyone that is going through a job search journey. But the reality is it's starting to really wear on me. I want to work. I want to thrive. I know that for all of these companies that I've interviewed for, I would be an amazing fit and do great things at that company, because I wouldn't have made it to the final round of that interview process if I didn't feel that this was a good fit for me and that the position wasn't a good fit for me. So I know I would have done a good job there, but it just didn't work out. And that's the way life works. And I'm in a fortunate position. My wife, as I said, is a rock star. We're able to keep the lights on. We're able to put food on the table for ourselves and our daughter. And we're going to be okay. But psychologically, not being able to provide for the family, not being able to look yourself in the mirror every day and have a purpose of a job that you're going to, that you're working towards, that you're providing value for people, that starts to wear on you. And it's certainly wearing on me. So if you're out there and you're like me, know that you are not alone in this process. If you need someone to converse with, I'm not hard to find. I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on Facebook, I'm on Instagram, I'm on TikTok. You can find us. I'd be happy to share ideas with you, try to help you however I can. That helps provide purpose for me. But I wanted to be honest. I wanted to have a vulnerable moment. And I wanted to share with you that this has been a struggle. Something that I don't share with people on a day-to-day basis. It's not something that I have really ever done. I hold a lot of things in. And some of that stems from I've had other moments of vulnerability that have been somewhat thrown in my face. And it's kind of psychologically taught me, quote unquote, to keep things in. That doesn't help. And what you find is when you start to slip into a little bit of this tough time, other things start to suffer that you didn't know was going to suffer. I'm not as motivated to go work out. I still go, but I don't work out as hard. I've been holding off on some of the things that I was doing on a daily basis just to kind of take a break from, but that also isn't helping. But the point of this is not a woe is me. The point of this is to share with anyone who may be listening to this that's going through a tough job search process. And it may get tougher. We may be heading into a recession. Who knows? Some of the talk is that we are. Some of the other talk is that we're not. And this could be a really difficult process, but you're not alone. And I know I'm here for you. And I hope that if you're listening to this, maybe you're there for me too. Because this is tough. And what I can also say is that even if I do end up finding a job, this podcast will continue. Because I believe in it. I believe in what it was started on. And I believe in all the people who are looking, the hundreds of thousands of people that are currently looking for a job and are struggling. They're just struggling. And I understand that. And I'm with you. And I'm rooting for you. Every time you start a podcast, you believe that it's going to take off immediately, right? I really thought out this podcast a lot. I looked at the numbers of people that were looking for jobs. I looked at the situations people were in, and I thought, man, if there's a resource where people can learn information, this is the place where I would like for it to happen. I'm not going to charge them money for it. I just want them to hear it. I want to get the numbers up, get the word out, help as many people as I can. That doesn't always happen. And this podcast has been a slow growth. Has it grown? Yeah. Has it been as fast as I would like? No. I don't know how many people are actually listening to this on a daily basis. I'm hoping that there are people who are hearing these episodes and thinking of people and saying that person really could benefit from hearing this information about a LinkedIn profile or hearing this information about what recruiters think that candidates can do to help themselves out when they get into an interview or whatever the topic may be of that particular episode. I'm hoping that you're doing that. If you're listening to this and you hear somebody, please share it with them. But it's never what you think it's going to be. But that's okay. Because I know there's at least one person who can benefit from this. And that one person is what I have in the back of my mind every time I hit record and I speak to somebody that I haven't met and we learn some great information from all the different guests that I've had so far and the more that we'll have coming. And if you've gotten to the end of this, thank you for listening to me. It was a moment of vulnerability on my part. It was something that as I was taking a shower this morning, just was weighing on my mind. And I realized I'm not doing awesome. I'm okay. I'm not in such a crazy state where anyone should be worried about me or anything like that. It's not like that. But I'm struggling. And I know that there's a lot of people who struggle. Even if you have a job right now, you may be struggling too. Well, you're not alone either. It's tough. Life's tough. But it's worth it. And you find your motivations. My family, both immediate and extended, it's my motivation. It's what keeps me going. My daughter, wanting her to thrive, I want that more than anything in the world. That's a motivation. But it also weighs on you when you don't have income coming in because there's things that we want to save for her. And that contributes to not being in a great state. But again, you're not alone. And you will get through it. And if you're in a place where you're down, I want to say this again. I said this in the very first episode, and I want to say this again. You are not a failure. You are not worthless. You will find another position. And not only will you find it, you will thrive in that position. I just believe that. Why? If for nothing else, maybe you needed a wake-up call and maybe this was it. Maybe there were some things that you were doing that you didn't know you were doing that wasn't helping your career out. I've thought about that with my own career. And maybe this was just what you needed to when you get that next position, you're going to thrive. That's what I believe for myself. I'm so motivated right now. I've learned so much about myself as an employee. I'm going to be incredible for my next job. Incredible. I'm going to be there for a long time. and I'm going to thrive. And by thrive, I'm not even in a position right now where I'm thinking, gosh, I'm going to move up the ladder and I'm going to become this like VP of whatever. Not even on my radar. I'm going to thrive at what I'm doing, and anything that comes of that, so be it. But I know all of you are like that, and you're not alone. This is obviously a different episode. So if this is your very first one, I really highly encourage you to look at some of the previous ones where I have a guest. That's more what the format of this podcast is. But I wanted to show you that I don't have all the answers, and I'm going through stuff too. But if this is your very first episode, hey, thank you. If you've made it this far, thank you for listening to me for what is going on 35 minutes. If you've listened to a bunch previous and this is just the next one you're listening to, thank you, thank you, thank you. Because it's because of you that I keep going. But I'm going to ask you to do something. I'm going to ask you to share this with at least 1 or 2, heck, 5 of your friends that you think this might help or that you think might like to listen to this. I'm going to ask you to rate it on Spotify or on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcast. Rate it, review it, help get me in front of more people. If you're on YouTube, please subscribe. Please like it. Heck, enter a comment, start a conversation with that episode to help get the word out. But with that, I'm going to go ahead and end this episode. I thank you again for listening to me today. And we'll see you soon with our guests. On the next podcast, we're going to talk to a hiring manager. I've talked to a lot of recruiters. I've talked to coaches that are helping candidates when they get into the job, but I hadn't talked to a hiring manager yet, and I got an opportunity to do that, and it's a great conversation. I can't wait for you to hear it. But with that, I'm going to go ahead and leave you, and we'll see you soon. Bye-bye.